Alright, hello everyone and welcome to Sunburned Albino's Pool 2 tier list for Marvel Snap. We are going to be ranking all the cards in Pool 2. Already did it in Pool 1 if you missed that video or want to check that one out. In that video we ranked all the Pool 1 cards against each other. We didn't factor in like later tiers and cards and how that would affect some other stuff. And for Pool 2 we're going to do the same thing, not factoring heavily if these cards get invalidated at later tiers. Agent 13, it's a 1/2 on reveal, add a random card to your hand. I'm going to be straight up honest with you, this is one of my favorite cards in the entire game. I love the thrill of a gamble that doesn't really have a downside. Like Agent 13, even if she puts a bad card in your hand, like the alternative is you could have either played nothing, which would be worse, or you could have played another 1-cost card that wouldn't make like a humongous difference. The first turn of the game really does not matter. So why not spend it rolling the dice and getting the chance to add some extremely powerful, beyond your comprehension cards to your hand. This card takes from all the pools. It's not just Pool 2. Agent 13 will put a Series 5 card in your hand if she feels like it. If she's had her coffee that morning, I'll tell you what, it can be an absolute game changer. Agent 13 sometimes wins you the game, that's a fact. Like, she's either gonna make no difference or she's gonna win you the game. She'll never lose you the game. And I'm going to put Agent 13 in... and especially for Pool 2, yeah, she's S tier in Pool 2. Her usefulness starts falling off as you start unlocking the really powerful cards that she might put in your hand, because then you'll just have them in your deck. But as far as Pool 2 is concerned, Agent 13 absolutely will just fight way above her weight class and sometimes just put some real bangers up in there. Next up we have Ebony Maw. Where's this man at? There you go. Highest power 1-cost card, at least that I've encountered. You can't play this after turn 3. And ongoing, you can't play cards here. So that's Ebony Maw, 1 cost, 7 power, but the trickiness is the drawback for him. Because as soon as you play Ebony Maw, you can no longer play any cards in that location. So if you're going to do something with Ebony Maw, you either need to get it done first, and then have him be the final thing that you put in that column. Where Ebony Maw probably gets some of its best utility is in movement decks. If you can move cards to its location after you play it there instead of actually playing them there, then Ebony Maw can be a net positive. If you get Ebony Maw out there and then maybe play like Vision on turn 5 and have Vision move over there, although that's a pretty telegraphed situation. But still, just because your opponent knows what you want to do doesn't mean they can stop it. But yeah, I would say in Pool 2 there's not like a whole lot of utility for this card. C tier. Next up we have Iceman. As somebody who is deep into Pool 3 right now, if you see my collection level is 779, still in Pool 3, because once you get to Pool 3, the cards come in a lot slower, I'll tell you that. Let me tell you, I see Iceman in almost every deck. Iceman is like the premier 1 energy cost card. He doesn't need anything else to make him good. On reveal, give a random card in your opponent's hand plus 1 cost. That just destroys combos right there. Like, single-handedly can destroy an opponent's entire plan of attack. Make them have to like shuffle some things around and do some things they didn't want to do. And sometimes it can just make cards that they want to play unplayable. So Iceman is a absolute S tier. You don't really need to even discuss it that much. Is there a place where you can see like the most played cards at any given time? Because I would be real interested in those statistics. But I would definitely hazard a guess that Iceman is up there. Next up we have Sunspot. At the end of each turn, gain +1 power for each unspent energy. This is not an ongoing effect, so it can't be negated by something like Enchantress. Where Sunspot really shines is in Infinite decks. So what people will do is that they will have the Infinite in their deck. If you played a card last turn, you can't play this, which is a horrendous negative unless you have Sunspot on the field, because if you don't play anything on turn 5, that means Sunspot is going to get 5 power for free. So that's generally the combo you're going to see in Pool 2 is some Sunspot Infinite action. He's a vulnerable card. People are on the lookout for him. And because he's a 1-cost card, he can be destroyed by both Elektra and my man Killmonger, and lots of people run Killmonger. So if you want to play Sunspot, you pretty much, I'm not going to say you have to, but it would be a good idea for you to run him with armor, making it so cards at this location can't be destroyed. In Pool 1, I said armor was not a very useful card. That changes in Pool 2. They have the entire game, basically, to destroy this card, to like figure out a way to negate it or get rid of it. Generally, if you're running Sunspot Infinite, your Sunspot is going to have, at the bare minimum, 6 power by the end of the game, so it'll be a 1/6. A B, and the reason for that is because it's so vulnerable. Alright, next up we have Bucky Barnes. When this is destroyed, create the Winter Soldier in its place. It's a 2-cost, 1-power card. When you destroy it, it turns into a 2-cost, 6-power card, the Winter Soldier. It's time for me to face the past. People will play like Nova or Squirrel Girl or something, then they play Bucky Barnes in whichever place they're gonna play Carnage later on, and then Carnage will destroy Bucky Barnes, creating the Winter Soldier. Carnage gets buffed, Winter Soldier is a 6. But yeah, Bucky Barnes is a gimme. If you're running any kind of destruction deck, he pretty much has to be in there. It doesn't mean that he's amazing, it's just that there's no reason not to put him in the deck. So I'm going to put Bucky Barnes an A tier. Like, I would say he's essential, but he's not essential in the way that he's gonna, like, super win you the game. He's just essential because it's like, why wouldn't you take advantage of this buff you're getting? Next up, we have Cloak. On reveal, next turn both players can move cards to this location. 2 cost, 4 power. Playing a 2/4 is just good when on average you would be playing like a 2/3. So having that 1 extra power is nice. Next turn both players can move cards to this location. Obviously you're going to run him with a move deck. If your opponent is not running a move deck, they are not going to get very much benefit out of this effect, even though they can do it as well. It's just much more helpful for you if you're 100% capitalizing on why Cloak is in your deck to begin with. You know, you run Cloak with Vulture, you run him with Craven, probably one of the more important cards in that deck. So I am going to give Cloak A tier as well. He's like the Bucky Barnes of move decks. Like, you have to have him in there. Next up we have Morbius. It's Morbin time. The meme himself, Morbius. 2 cost, 0 power, ongoing, plus 2 power for each time you discarded a card this game. It's ongoing, which means Enchantress can get rid of it. But yeah, plus 2 power for each time you discarded a card this game. If you're discarding cards every turn like you should be, Morbius is going to be like a 2/4 or a 2/8 by the end. As long as you're doing what needs to be done, Morbius is going to just be like a nice card to have on the field that's just constantly getting buffs from you doing what you would be doing anyway. I'm going to say a B tier card, just a card that's like, why wouldn't you put it in your deck in Pool 2 if you're running discard? Like, you gotta. Next up we have Okoye, 2/1. Oh, she's not a 2/1 anymore, she got buffed. That's why this tier list is old. Okoye is now a 2/2. On reveal, give every card in your deck plus 1 power. She definitely needed that buff because this effect isn't that good. Notice it says every card in your deck plus 1 power, which means none of the cards in your hand are getting this buff, and you're only going to be drawing on average, by the time you play Okoye, 3 cards? So really you only get 3 chances to take advantage of this buff, but she's definitely meant to be used with cards like Black Panther. A multiplicative benefit from having higher power to begin with. Like, Black Panther on reveal doubles his power, so the more power you give him in your hand, the more he can double. So Okoye is good for cards like that. Also good for buffing cards like Mr. Sinister that create clones that copy their power. I do see Okoye a decent amount, and I question the utility. Just don't think she's that good. I'm giving Okoye probably C tier. And we may do some moving around out of this, because I'm wondering what I would put in D tier. So we'll see when we get there. Maybe we have to adjust the scale a little bit. Next up, we have Scorpion. Scorpion, 2/2. On reveal, afflict cards in your opponent's hand with -1 power. This card is similar to Iceman in that it's a staple. It's really... I don't think it gets as much use as Iceman does, but Scorpion is really good for nerfing cards in your opponent's hand. It can really make a big difference. Double the difference against cards that, like, Okoye would want to buff. Like, for example, Black Panther will turn into a 5/6 on reveal instead of a 5/8. Yeah, he's just really good at, like, making you look at your hand with disgust. That's what happened. Every time Scorpion is played against me, I'm just like, oh my god, that's so annoying. Which means it's effective. A, bordering on S tier. I think we'll revisit this later, but I'm gonna tentatively say S tier for now, Scorpion. Next we have Swarm. Swarm is a 2/3. When this is discarded from your hand, add 2 copies that cost 0 to your hand. This card gets better as the pools go on because more cards are introduced that can specifically target Swarm instead of you having to just pray that Swarm is the one that gets discarded. So in Pool 2, you have access to Blade, you have access to Swordmaster, and those are probably the only cards that can really discard Swarm. Like, it has to be by accident. Swarm really does not get going. In Pool 2, he needs more enablers that he doesn't have. I think Swarm in Pool 2 specifically is a C-tier card. I don't think it gets the chance to shine until later on. Next we have the Collector. 2-1, the Collector. When a card enters your hand from anywhere except your deck, +1 power. So anytime you draw a card by an effect, like Mantis or Cable for instance, the Collector gets 1 power. This card in Pool 2 does not really get off the ground. I made a Collector-specific deck. Moon Girl, if you double the cards in your hand, all those cards go straight to the Collector's power too. So I was like, okay, I'll put Collector. I'll make a deck with Collector as the center, and I'll just also put in like this Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur stuff because there's a bit of a synergy there. But what ended up happening was that Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur was doing all the work, and the Collector really was not doing a whole lot. He would maybe get to be like a 2-5 or a 2-6 occasionally. He just wasn't that important of a card to the proceedings. Definitely goes off later on when there are more cards that can like take stuff from the field and put it into your hand, or take it from anywhere, put it into your hand, just get like more at a time. I would put him in like B tier as well. Next we have Killmonger. I'm wondering if this is like the defining card of Pool 2, because everybody is watching out for Killmonger and everybody is running Killmonger as a just in case kind of card. It's like every deck, even that has nothing to do with Killmonger, should have Killmonger in it, just in case your opponent is playing 1-cost cards like Sunspot or Ebony Maw, or running a Khazar deck with like trying to get a bunch of Squirrel Girl clones and 1-cost cards and buffing them. Killmonger will destroy all of those. An anti-meta card, or a meta-defining card, I guess you could say either one. He's just like a card that needs to be in your deck. It's okay if you don't have him in your deck, but there are duels that you will lose if you don't have Killmonger in your deck. So I am going to put Killmonger in S tier. I think that's probably one of the most confident S tier picks I have. There is a chance that Killmonger is the best card in Pool 2. I will revisit it. Next up we have either Nakla or Nakia. I am honestly not sure. Is that an I? I think that's an I. I think it's Nakia. She is a 3-cost of 1 power. On reveal, give the 2 leftmost cards in your hand +2 power. So Nakia does nothing on the field, but what she does is she super enables cards that like to be buffed in your hand, like Black Panther and Mr. Sinister, and just any card that clones itself or doubles its power on reveal. Nakia is all over that action, and I would say that she does a better job than Okoye does because it's more targeted. I still think she does her job a little bit better than Okoye, also in C tier, but like above her. Like, we'll order these. We'll order these at the end. Next up we have Rhino. Rhino is a card I don't have a ton of experience with. On reveal, ruin this location, remove its ability. It's basically just Scarlet Witch, but instead of possibly benefiting or disbenefiting from what the location turns into, Rhino is just like, you know what, fuck locations in general. Like, we just don't like them. We don't like active effects out here. I want to exist in ruins. Is that okay? So Rhino is good for getting rid of negative abilities. He also gets rid of them before they activate. So if you play Rhino and like a cards played here are destroyed type of situation, Rhino will destroy the location without getting destroyed. One avenue I've just now considered Rhino for is an anti-storm card. If Storm gets played, where on reveal, flood this location, next turn is the last turn cards can be played here, if that turn or the turn after, you can play Rhino in the place that they played Storm and just negate her ability entirely. So that can be a decent thing to do, I suppose. Like, Rhino doesn't really do a whole lot for you, unless a location is disproportionately benefiting your opponent. But in that situation, I would rather use Scarlet Witch, just because not only does she cost 1 less, but I think it's kind of fun to have a new location pop up that could be good or bad for you. C tier. Next up, we have Sabertooth. When this is destroyed, return it to your hand at cost 0. This is a 3-cost card normally with 4 power, and if it gets destroyed, it goes back to your hand and costs 0, maintaining the whatever power it had when it was destroyed. So if you happen to buff it, you're going to get a copied version of that buff. This is just a good free card to play and then have it get destroyed somehow by Carnage, for instance. I think Sabertooth is definitely like a necessary card in a destruction deck, especially in Pool 2. I wouldn't say he's as good as Bucky Barnes, but he, you know, it's just like there's no reason not to run him. Next up we have Storm. As we mentioned, Storm is a 3-2. On reveal, she floods this location. Next turn is the last turn cards can be played here. What that means is she changes the location's effect, whatever the effect is, to flood this location. Next turn is the last turn cards can be played here. So she alters the location, and then it generally forces a scramble of your opponent trying to beat you in that one location next turn. Otherwise, they won't have any more shots, unless they've got cards that can move. I think Storm and Vision is a good combo, because Vision can just kind of be played anywhere and get moved wherever he wants to go. Where's he at? You can move this each turn, or you could play Storm, and then you could play Claw, like, to the left of Storm so that the extra power goes to Storm. There's definitely ways to play Storm and to counter Storm. She forces the issue. When Storm gets played, the duel becomes about Storm. Like, she's an attention hog for sure. Probably B tier. Next up we have Vulture. The most important Pool 2 card for movement decks, that's for sure. This card has, like, the most potential to just go off and be strong as hell for no good reason. Vulture is a 3/3. When this card moves, +5 power. In Pool 2, you're going to have a decent amount of ways to do that. You can wait on Cloak and not play him until you've already played Vulture, for instance. Or you can play Iron Fist and then play Vulture. You can have Heimdall move Vulture, Doctor Strange move Vulture. There's a lot of ways for Vulture to move around and get super high power. I've seen him up to like 18 by the end of a duel. But yeah, Vulture is absolutely essential to movement-oriented decks. He comes out here and pretty much always gets extremely buffed if you're doing it correctly. But the downside is that he's predictable. Movement decks in general are predictable. Your opponent, if you've played like 3 or 4 different movement decks, you played them all, you can pretty much guess what your opponent's trying to do. A tier, because he's a card that is devastating, but he can also be played around. Alright, next up we have Jubilee, which is another one of my favorite cards, but in Pool 2, she's not that good. She is another staple of the Sunspot Infinite deck. Jubilee is a 4-cost, 1-power card. On reveal, play a card from your deck at this location. It's a random card. It could be any card in your deck. She plays it, it'll activate its on-reveal ability, and it'll just be there if it has an on-reveal ability, or its ongoing ability, or whatever it's got going on. She just plays a card for you. And that's good if you get the Dream combo, which is Jubilee plays the Infinite for free. That's what everybody's going for when they play Jubilee, so that they can have a 6-cost, 20-power card that is otherwise very committal to put on the field, just out there having the time of his life, destroying cities with its giant size and whatnot, locking down a location and making people rage quit. When I was in Pool 2 doing some Jubilee Infinite shenanigans, pretty much any time Jubilee did summon Infinite, the opponent just retreated immediately. But the flip side of that is that she could also summon like a 1-cost card that hadn't shown up in your hand yet. So I think if you're going to run Jubilee, you need to gravitate more towards cards that are at least useful if Jubilee were to play them for you, so that you don't feel like you wasted 4 energy on her. And she also definitely needs to be run with Odin. But yeah, I would say she's pretty good. I would give her B tier. Sometimes she'll outright win you the game, but that's not super common. Next up we have Sandman. Sandman is probably... I just have not found a good use for this card. Ongoing, players can only play 1 card a turn. I think in really later pools that revolve around playing a lot of low-cost cards at once, Sandman can definitely put a stop to that action, but in Pool 2 you don't see that at all, and most people are playing 1 card per turn anyway. So I think Sandman is borderline useless in Pool 2. I think he is probably F tier, and yeah, he trash. Alright, next up we have Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is probably in contention with Killmonger as the definitive Pool 2 card. This man comes out here with his 4-cost, 3-power. On reveal, he destroys all enemy cards at this location that have 9 or more power. This is anti-Devil Dinosaur tech. If your opponent played Devil Dinosaur on turn 5 and you have Shang-Chi, it's gone. You'll win that location. This card was made to counter Devil Dinosaur, and a whole lot of other cards that exist in later pools. This card only gets better as time goes on, because the cards get more broken, which means more cards can be destroyed by Shang-Chi. The only real drawback is that you generally have to play him on turn 6, because that's when your opponent is going to play a card that has 9 or more power. Is on turn 5, maybe 6. But yeah, if there's a card that's already out there doing some work, Shang-Chi can destroy it. Shang-Chi is really good at destroying Vulture in particular, Devil Dinosaur. Shang-Chi will come out here and destroy a buffed Warpath or a buffed Namor, if anybody runs Namor anymore. I haven't seen this card since I left Pool 2. Any of these 6 costs, like, he's gonna get out there and destroy them as long as your opponent plays them before you play them and you guess where they're gonna play them. And then on the turn 5 side, he's gonna come out here and destroy Abomination. If Abomination's just out there, he's gonna destroy a Gamora that guessed right where you were gonna play. But yeah, you're gonna see this. The more you play this game, the more you are gonna see Shang-Chi. He is another, like, maybe put him in every deck kind of situation. So I'm going to put Shang-Chi in S tier. Next up, we have Warpath. Warpath is a 4-cost, 5-power card with an ongoing effect if any of your locations are empty plus 4 power. So Warpath is a good card to have in your deck if your strategy is to just overwhelm 2 locations while abandoning a third. And because he's a 4/5 anyway, like if you are playing on a third location, like he's still gonna help you a little bit. Like 5 power isn't nothing. 9 power is better, but you don't need it. Especially if you find yourself in a situation where like you've just done like this display of brute strength with Warpath on a location that you're a much higher power than your opponent in now, so you think they've abandoned it, like they're not gonna try and contest you anymore. Then on later turns, you can play on the lane that you would otherwise leave empty and neuter Warpath, but it won't matter because your opponent hasn't bothered trying to contest you on Warpath's location anyway. He's definitely a I wouldn't say advanced card, but like he requires some forethought. And I haven't given him a whole lot of usage, but I've played him here and there and generally haven't been sour on him. I would say that Warpath is probably like a B tier card. Next up we have Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin is a 5-cost, -8 power. On reveal, your opponent gains control of this. I really like this card. I like Hobgoblin. It does what it says. There are some counters to Hobgoblin, unfortunately. If you play Hobgoblin in a location where your opponent already has 4 cards, it's just going to stay on your side and you screwed yourself out of the location for sure. If you play Hobgoblin on turn 5 and then your opponent plays Odin in the lane that Hobgoblin is in on their side, it will activate the ability again and send it right back over to you, Red Rover style. So that can be very nasty. But some other unfortunate situations can occur, like if you play Hobgoblin in the same lane somebody just played Cosmo, then your ability is not going to activate and you're just stuck with it now. But I still think Hobgoblin is like a fun card. I think there are counters to it. It can definitely end up screwing you over as well, but he's fun enough that I'm going to put him in B tier. Next up we have Leech. Leech is a card, the first time I saw Leech, I was like, oh, that's OP. This dude is 5-cost, 3 power. On reveal, remove the abilities from all cards in your opponent's hand. Yeah, this card will stop people from Odining. It will stop them from doing a whole lot of different 6-star options. Pretty much exists to ruin turn 6 for your opponent. Then I used Leech in like 5 or 6 decks and got almost no utility out of it. You know, if your opponent on turn 6 is just playing a card that has high power anyway, and that's the extent of their strategy, Leech isn't really putting a stop to that at all. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Leech is like actually surprisingly not that good. I'm gonna put it in C tier. It has use, but I think in Pool 2, it doesn't really stop people from doing what they're trying to do. Next up, we have Vision. You can move this each turn. It's a 5-cost, 7-power card. It's pretty good, just straight up. Very simple, straightforward card. Play it, put it wherever you want next turn. Try and keep your opponent guessing with which lane you're actually trying to shore up. I think Vision is probably, honestly, B tier. It's not amazing. It's not amazing. It's just, like, pretty good. All right, and then next we have Infinite. We've talked about Infinite, but let's get a little more into it. 6-cost, 20 power. If you play this card, you win the lane. That's what that means. If you played a card last turn, you can't play this. So you have to skip turn 5 in order to play the Infinite, unless you've got a location that like gives you +1 energy per turn or something. Then you can do it on turn. Then you can skip turn 4 and play it on turn 5 instead. The point is that Infinite is difficult to play normally, so you have to bolster it with other effects like Sunspot. Sunspot has to be in an Infinite deck. Jubilee has to be in an Infinite deck. As far as Pool 2 is concerned, those are really the only ones that can help it. I ran a Jubilee deck with Infinite and Sunspot for like 20 or 30 duels when I was going through Pool 2. I would say I won maybe half of them, because sometimes you just can't really do what you're trying to do. Either you don't draw Sunspot, in which case you just have to take the wasted turn 5, and then it doesn't matter where you play Infinite because your opponent will still win 2 locations no matter what. So the Infinite can definitely back you into an unwinnable corner by making you skip that turn, but if you can navigate around its restrictions, it can also just make people retreat immediately. I would say Infinite is probably also just like a B tier card. And that's all we got for Pool 2 cards. Way less Pool 2 cards than Pool 1 cards. That's for sure. So let's get out here. Let's order some stuff within the tiers. Let's see if we got to move anything around. I think probably the best card in Pool 2 is Shang-Chi, followed by Killmonger, followed by Iceman, followed by Scorpion, followed by Agent 13. Agent 13 is really just in there because I like her a lot, her effect and stuff. A tier, I think Cloak, then Vulture. Cloak is very necessary to make Vulture good, as well as other cards. The top of B tier, I'm gonna say belongs to... I will say Sunspot at the top. Morbius can be underwhelming. Maybe Vision goes here. I would say then we would play Warpath, perhaps. Followed by Jubilee. I'll put Jubilee ahead of Warpath. Then Morbius, sure. The Collector, sure. Sabretooth. I think Storm should be ahead of Sabretooth should probably be at the end here. Yeah, I think that's good. Leech, then Ebony Maw. I think that works. And then Sandman's an F tier. No D tiers. Big gap between these cards and Sandman. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned, Albino, and whatnot. I will be back with a Pool 3 tier list once I have every card from there and have used them adequately. And I will see you guys next time.